This is Sports 225, Baton Rouge's longest running and best TV show. Now in its 18th year, if you count those 16 years of Sports Monday, and we do. Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Now, here's your host, Lee Feinswald.
Good evening. Tonight on Sports 225, I'll tell you that later, WAFB sportscaster Jacques Doucet will join me, and it might be the first time he's on Sports 225. He was a Sports Monday guy at times, and we got a lot of things to talk about with Jacques. But first off, Ray Castle. Now, you're probably saying at first, they're saying, who's Ray Castle?
That's not uncommon.
And that's all right.
Not uncommon they do that. So.
That's okay. Ray Castle's an associate professor of kinesiology at LSU, who in a Reader's Digest version would be to say that he trains trainers and athletic trainers who work athletic events, LSU events, and other things. But Ray and a lot of his people were working the Boston Marathon.
Yep.
And there you go. So that's the hook.
Yep.
So here's the other part before I let Ray jump in. So Ray and I have known each other, and I said, Ray, I got to catch up on you a little bit. I said, can you send me a resume? So he sends me an email with an attachment, and I opened it up, and I looked at it, and I said, oh, there's what I need to know, and I hit print. Ray, 23 pages.
Killing trees.
23 pages. I thought it was going to be one page. It's 23 pages, but I want you to know I read all 23 of them. You've been some places.
You read more than I have on that, so like that. So.
You've been some places.
Yeah, a couple places.
But specifically, as far as it goes, Southern Miss.
Yes.
Louisiana Lafayette, back when it was the Artist formerly known as USL.
Yep. Red Dot basketball, and
that's it.
I know I first met you there.
Yeah.
You were doing coverage there for men's basketball and I think other sports as well.
I was real good friends with the old staff there, with Marty Fletcher and a guy named Todd Reinhardt, who was an assistant coach, and then Ray worked with them, and we knew each other from there. And boy, I had no idea that however many years later, which I think Marty's been gone probably about 17 years, 16 years.
Yeah, this 97, 98, I'm sorry, 96, 97 was his last season there.
Yeah.
So.
By the way, the last that I heard about Marty was that he was the director of women's officials for the Mountain West Conference.
I think so. I know I got a message from his wife, Cynthia, not long after we'd gotten back from Boston, and that they were sending through Facebook and sent a message.
There you go.
Doing well. So I keep in touch with them fairly every once in a while, and Todd and Eric and the rest of them over there.
There you go. So, of course, when everything happened in Boston, Ray and I kept up a little bit, as did everyone from here who had some connection or friends or associates who had either gone to run the race or be a part of it. And your situation was really unique because you guys didn't go to run.
No,
so
we did
not. Tell me how that came about.
Well, I ran, but not because I wanted to.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We had actually, I'm going to backtrack for a second, how I got kind of somewhat hooked on the marathon. This was my first year providing medical coverage. The medical coordinator, Chris Tiranos, who is also an athletic trainer, I met him in '99, I think. We were roommates at the Olympic Training Center up in Lake Placid. So he's from Boston.
You worked with bobsled, right?
Yes, a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
Went on the World Cup tour with him in Europe for a little bit. So after that, he kept asking me, you ought to come up for the marathon. It's a great event. And I had some other friends who had mentioned something about it, and finally just decided, okay, I'm going to do it this year, and found out they also have athletic training students from other universities come in. So I put an email and also spoke with our students in our program, and they have a limited number per program that can go up. Mm-hmm. Most of they have is 5. And so I sent it out, and 3 were able to go, and they paid their own way up to the Boston and Boston University athletic training students. They house them there. Mm-hmm. And my wife came up with me, and we stayed with a friend of hers who went to first grade up to high school at U-High, Alice Stuckey Michelle, and her husband Mark, and their kids. They stayed north of the city. They live north of the city, so about 30 miles. So that's where we stayed with them, and so we were up doing the medical coverage for the event. And
now, what was your job like that day?
Well, being an athletic trainer, we're forward front already. We're doing that. They have if you look at where the finish line is, so everything back, we had about 130 athletic trainers. So it was really a big a forward front of what we do medical coverage. So I was there from our main area was from the finish line. There's a media bridge on back to the next to the block, and that's where the main medical tent was. So in that area, we had about 3 or 4 physicians, and then we had about 15 or so certified athletic trainers and 30 athletic trained students. And these were first year, second year, third year clinical
And 3
students.
of those, of course, were yours.
Yes, one was actually running. We had 20 there doing wheelchair duty, another 10 that were floaters. So we had, by chance, had one of our athletic training students was there, happened to be a first year athletic training student, and then the other 2 were on the next block doing, they call it suite duty, or next couple of blocks past the water and the metals, and you go back about 2 blocks down, then you turn, and there's another medical tent. Has about 80 or 90 beds, I think. The main medical tent had about 240 beds.
Because they expected that many people to need medical attention after a race of that magnitude.
Yes, the year before, in the last year, they had serious heat issues. They had multiple hypothermia cases, 108, 109 temperatures. Nobody, was fortunate was that the steps they put in place, I think they've had that, but it was really, you think if you plan for that, that's really the worst they had ever. And so you're having that many cases and serious, no renal failure, no nothing out of that. So so that's where I was initially signed. I was initially signed to the heat and hypothermia.
But this particular year it was real cool. The weather was ideal for running.
I'm wearing thermals, in the 50s and beautiful weather. So for that day. So that morning they moved me to the finish line area.
So that's where you were.
Yes.
Well, that is a perfect place for us to hold everyone's interest, including my own, and take a break because, wow, the finish line was where it was at.
Yes, it was.
Wow. Ray Castle, he's an associate professor of kinesiology at LSU, and as you just gathered, he was at the Boston Marathon and at the finish line, and what comes next I'm sure will be most interesting. I'm Lee Feinswag, you're watching Sports 225.